Hey guys, my name is Zeto Barrios. I'll be going over our new direct-to-film process using our 330 TX. If you end up purchasing our DTF kit, this is everything that will be included. You're gonna get 100 sheets of the cold or hot film, whichever one you decide on there for your production needs. You're gonna get a bottle to be able to distribute our DTF powder. We're gonna have a funnel. This funnel will be used to clean up any of the excess powder that we have in our tray. 1 kilo of DTF powder will be included in your kit. You're gonna have a squeegee, which will also help us clean up our area here. And then finally, we're gonna have a tray, which will just help contain all the powder inside in one location. A couple things you're gonna wanna know before starting. The film has a printable side and a non-printable side, so you wanna make sure you are printing on the right side. When you first get your packet, we actually put the label on the top side that you actually want to print on. You notice the back has no label. If for whatever reason you can't determine it that way, the layer we're printing on is actually a frosted sort of layer. The back side of the film is sort of glossy, so you don't want to print on the glossy side. We're going to be printing on this frosted layer side. When you're handling the film, you also want to make sure you have no moisture on your fingers, any moisture, especially where you start as well. The coating on the film can actually come off if you have moisture on your fingers or if moisture lands on the film. So try to make sure your hands are nice and dry when you're handling the film. The settings we're going to provide you today are specific for our ink and this film. So if you are using alternative films, alternative inks, you may get different results. So we were able to partner the perfect film with our inks to work perfectly with our settings that we will be providing. Additionally, another extra PLATEN you can use is our heated vacuum PLATEN. So this PLATEN actually heats up on the surface, which allows the film and the ink to dry faster as well. Besides that, we actually incorporate a vacuum in the actual PLATEN, which will pretty much hold my entire film down without it moving. Now this is very important to avoid any head strikes, any head rubs. You definitely want to avoid this film striking the print head. So our heated PLATEN will sit on our bed just like any other PLATEN. We're just going to go ahead and corner it to the left side, make sure it's up against the rails. On the back side, we're going to have the power cable, and we're also going to have the cable for our temperature controller. Now it's important that we guide these very carefully in the back to avoid the gantry from hitting any of these cables. You're going to get a cable holder and a strap, which we usually place in the center here to hold both of these cables. We're then going to route it to this back side and this corner and tie them up one more time. After you're done, one thing we suggest is hit standby so it goes to the back, and make sure the gantry is not hitting these cables, which is what I'm going to do now. There it is. Didn't reach the cable. It's exactly how you want it. The temperature controller, you'll be able to adjust temperatures up and down here and power it off. It also comes with a magnetic strip in the back, so you can just attach it right to the side of your printer. Next, we'll be placing our sheet on our PLATEN. Now, if you are not going to be using the vacuum heated PLATEN, you're still able to do this with just your standard PLATEN. Although, we recommend adding some double-sided tape to the corners to avoid any issues or those guys popping up. So I'm just going to add one last piece here. And there we go. So it's important that, we get this nice and flat. Again, you don't want these corners popping up in the middle of the print. The head could come here and rip this film right off, so you want to be very careful setting it up. So here, everything's good. Also, when you add your tape, make sure you don't add a huge amount of tape. You don't want a huge lumpy corner. So just a nice skinny piece of film, tape around there, holds it down. Next, after you've inspected the whole film that is nice and flat, we can set up our height. Now the height can be either your auto height, which is function and rear. You can also do your manual height. Both of them work, whichever one you prefer is going to be the one you're going to do there. So here I'll do the auto height. And the film's ready to go. So once you loaded your image into the RIP, the next thing we got to do is load our environment file. So there's two different ways you can do this. One way is drag and dropping the file into the actual RIP. Second one is opening the environment file here, so your little world with the wrench. Our manage environment window pops up, and the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna load our file. So you can see a little green arrow down here and it says import environment package. Go ahead and find your environment file. Here's the one for the Plus. You're gonna open. It'll then give you a list of what you're gonna install. So it tells you it's gonna put it in the Plus section, and it's gonna have a dark garment DTF and a white garment DTF. So once you're there, you're gonna hit the little green arrow. That's gonna start to import it. Usually throws them in at the very bottom. Go ahead and hit the green check mark, and then double check that they are listed in your environments. So there it is, 330 TX Plus, and you see dark garment DTF and white garment DTF. So in this case, I'll be using the dark garment DTF. Click on it here. Everything is basically set up with the exception of whatever size you want. So if you need to make it a certain size, go ahead and size it down. Position it to wherever you want it. In this case, I have my film in the center of my plan, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit top center there. And then lastly, you always wanna make sure you mirror your image. You have to remember we're stamping this on backwards, so you wanna make sure you mirror your image there. So I'll just preview it, make sure everything looks good. Again, it's mirrored, so all the letters and everything are backwards. That's exactly how you want it to come out. And after this, we are ready to start printing. So one thing with the films is it will be printing the color layer first, and then it'll print your white layer. So that is already set up in the environment. Normally all the other environments are set up to print white and then color. But in this case, when we're doing the direct to film, we want to actually do it backwards. So we want to do color first and then white. Now, because we've tested these films and everything, we are able to immediately just come right back and print the white layer right on top. So it's just gonna come right back and finish that off. So now that the film has been printed on, we can start removing it from our PLATEN here. Get rid of any of this tape. You can see the reverse side looks really nice, really solid. Now, any areas of the film that didn't get used, what I like to do is just cut it right off, and I'll save this little chunk for later on. You can use it for small pocket prints, different little things, tags. So I do like to save these extra pieces here. So I'll just be cutting that right off and setting it to the side. And then now this is an extra piece that I can use later on in case I gotta print something small. So now we take our film over to our tray. You can set it down in the tray. We're gonna have our powder bottle, and we're just gonna start applying it everywhere. So don't be afraid to really cover up the whole design. Any excess powder that comes off, that just gets into the tray, we'll be able to pick it right back up, put it back into our bottle, and reuse it for later. So don't be afraid to, get some in there. Get it all around. Once you have enough, go ahead and grab the film and just start working some more of that powder into the design. So I just kind of go back and forth a couple times. At this point, most of it's already covered, but to keep it safe, I like to roll it back and forth a couple times. Once you have full coverage, you can go ahead and just get all the excess off, give it a little shake. And the last thing I do is I just inspect the whole print, make sure everything is covered with the powder. If you do notice areas where there's no powder coverage, you can go ahead and just get some more in there and just continue working that powder into those areas. So this one covered pretty well. So I'm just gonna shake off the excess. The next thing we gotta do is melt our powder using our heat press. Now when we're melting the powder, we are gonna set our heat press to the lowest pressure setting, which will actually allow the heat press to hover. It'll let it sit about an inch from the actual film. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start bringing it down. Oop. And if you notice down here, it's not actually touching the film. That's exactly how you want to set it up to. You want to make sure it just starts to melt the film there. No pressure. Now this one I did remove the top cover. If you notice, I don't have the top cover on top. The reason I do that is because over time, these covers can get stretched out, and then in the middle, it'll actually hang down and it'll actually touch your film. So if you notice on this one, I actually removed my top cover to avoid that. If your cover is fairly new, then it should be nice and tight and you shouldn't have that issue. But in this case, I removed it, and that's why I don't have the top cover on there. All right, so now our powder has been melted. We can go ahead and start setting up our heat press to press the film onto our shirt. So I'm just gonna readjust our pressure now. You want medium pressure, so on your stalled heat press, it's gonna be a level 4, level 5. I do like to press it for a couple seconds beforehand, especially if you have a lot of wrinkles, any folds, stuff like that, or even if the shirt has collected any moisture, you want to press it for a couple seconds. Usually 5-10 seconds is more than enough. All right, now we have a nice flat surface. Now we're gonna apply our film. So position it where you want, make sure it is centered. Now I do recommend putting a sheet on your heat press. Although it's not necessarily needed, this film can be pressed directly. To avoid anything maybe that may be dirty on the press to transfer into your shirt, I like to just cover it with our sheet. Apply our temperature. Take your paper off. Now, depending on what film you got, hot or cold, this is where you either will have to wait if you have cold peel. If you have hot peel, you'll be able to remove this film right away. So in this case, I'm using hot film. Hot film I do suggest for faster production. You're able to peel it right off right away. So there it is. Beautiful print. Now, though it's not necessary, you can press the shirt for an extra 5 to 10 seconds. I do like to come in sometimes and give it just a couple second press. The second press, I notice, also kind of helps soften up this print a little bit. So I do like to give it that extra 5-second press at the end. A beautiful white, nice solid colors. Very easy. So that concludes the direct to film process.